guys, it is a beautiful sunny day. I'm sure you can see it from my eyes blinking several times over. And I have to say, I had the most interesting COVID conversation. Not yesterday, but the day before yesterday. We had a webinar Wednesday with Sight and Sound, and we were discussing how we're going to social distance in a place, well, you know, how we're going to social distance when we're blind. Because the blind world is a very physical world. You know, the blind community feel more at risk of COVID because we do have to touch surfaces a lot more. We have to hold hands a lot more. We read Braille a lot more, which is why the library for a time had been closed, the Braille library, because the Braille takes you, you know, you have to touch Braille. So in order to read it, most people have to touch it. So they didn't really want to pass COVID through Braille books. So how do you socially distance when you can't see people coming and you can only hear them coming? How do you socially distance in a queue? How do you do it? What issues are we having with social distances? What issues have we had with social distancing? Some of the stories were, put it this way, it reminds me of the phrase, if she wasn't pretty, she wouldn't get a job because they wouldn't pay for their brains. So we had at least 2 or 3 stories of real nastiness. So a wife went with her husband to the local shops to get her food. Because she was with her husband, they said that they couldn't serve her because they should only be serving one person. Now, you know, we could sit and say, why don't you just send your husband? But I think it's, you know, after a while sitting in the house, you need to get out to do something. You know, even if you're going to be about 2 meters away from another person, you need to feel the outdoors, which is why, even from the start of this, you have been allowed in your garden. Just as long as you stayed 2 meters away from your neighbours, you were allowed in your garden, you were allowed on your balconies. So she'd gone with her husband and they'd refused to serve them because they were counted as 2 people rather than 1 person with her helper. And they both lived together, so they felt that it was the best way of reducing the risk of catching and supplying other people with COVID. Well, she didn't get her food that week. And a lot of blind people have been, you know, presenting campaigns saying, you know, we need home deliveries because we can't really stand in a queue and know how far we are away from someone. But then again, if you've been blind from birth, I think your spatial awareness is much better than other people's. And so you are more capable of doing that. And I thought that with a cane, you could just like hold the cane out, and if you hit the other person, you know, within a 2 meter distance, you can't really do it. No one has a 2 meter cane, you know. You need to be guided or you need to have help. So people had gone over to get food because they couldn't have it delivered. So it's really rather interesting, the discussion about COVID and how jobs are going to happen, because, you know, access to work, apparently, if you're lucky enough to get it, which is very rare in my experience, if you're lucky enough to get access to work, they provide equipment for your workplace, or place of work, whether it's at home or the place of work, you know, in general. And this gentleman had problems with working from home because he couldn't get his massive equipment for his visual impairment and take it back home with him because it is the property of the business, and because he just didn't have room. He didn't have room in his house to put all of this equipment that he needed. He didn't have a workspace in the home to create that environment that aided him to do his work for Zurich. And he was saying, well, you know, how am I going to kind of socially distance at work? How is this going to happen? You know, and I think people take it in turns and they wear masks and they do their job and then they go and wash their hands and then they go home, you know? And a lot of anxiety was kind of portrayed about getting into hospitals, passing things on, having to touch things more, how we're going to deal with those things. Social distances were guiding. And I saw a Facebook status yesterday saying how frustrated a woman was who was also blind, and they had decided that due to social distancing, people weren't socially distancing in the shop whilst shopping, so they decided to tie a rope to people that are 2 meters apart and take people around the store attached to rope like they were on dog leads. Now you see, this particular woman found that really degrading. She didn't like it. She knew why that it had to happen, but she didn't actually like it. And sometimes we have to recognise that just, you know, things have to be accessible. It doesn't mean that things have to be accessible in the way we like it to be, you know? So it was really quite interesting. It doesn't mean that it has to be the way we want it to be, the way we like it to be. So this, you know, this particular person on Facebook was expressing that kind of point of view. So it's interesting that at the end of the discussion, there was a lot of interest in something called the Ramble tag. Now, the Ramble tag it's a bit like, you know how you see toddlers on leads? That's what I'd equate it to. It's a bit like being a toddler on a lead. But, you know, it was used mainly because people wanted a little bit more movement. You know, normally you take the other person's arm that is guiding you, so that the person who is guiding you is at the front of you. In the Ramble tag situation, you have a tag attached to your arm, so it's like it was described as a comfortable blood pressure monitor wrap. If you've ever had your blood pressure test, it would be like one of those with a little loop attached. Now, they thought that was a great idea because that meant that they weren't touching, and that if people sneezed and coughed into their elbow, that it wouldn't spread the infection as quickly, because you can't ensure that they haven't just coughed into their elbow and then you've taken their arm, you know? You can't assure yourself of that. So they came up with they've used the Ramble tag before now, but the Ramble tag has kind of become prominent in people's minds to buy and to use. As an idea, personally, I think it's okay if you're okay with people knowing that you're blind. It's okay if you're happy to be obviously blind. Other people are not happy to be obviously blind. Other people like to kind of just keep their blindness as a small part of them overall personage. They don't like it to be like the thing that defines them entirely. So they don't really want people to kind of perceive, oh, blind person, see the blindness and don't see the person. Whereas other people are happy with them to see the blindness and then to get over that blindness, to just see them as they are. So, you know, other people are comfortable with that. I don't think it's really going to help the social distancing issue, a Ramble tag. I don't think it's going to help very much. I mean, it might be useful for some. I don't think it's actually going to keep you 2 meters or 1 meter away from somebody else. The fact is that as long as you're not coughing on someone or breathing in the same spittle as another person, you'll be fine. Which is why it's 1 meter to 2 meters away. And I thought that maybe, like, you know, movement might be harder to pick up, but I suspect that you can pick it up. I can understand why autistics who don't like to be touched would use it, or anybody who doesn't like to be touched would use a Ramble tag. But for me, I don't think that's a fabulously impressive solution. I think it's one way of dealing with it. They also talked about badges and things with labels printed on, like, socially distancing, please keep yourself distant from me, sign attached. So a lady had put on Facebook, my guide dog doesn't understand social distancing, please don't touch the dog, please don't encourage the dog to come to you whilst I'm attached to her, because it's dangerous. She might be a cute dog and you might be stressed out, but please don't cuddle up to my dog. I can understand the frustration, I really can, but it's nice to know that she's actually getting out of the house with her dog. And I think that is a better solution to wear a badge or something that says, trying to socially isolate, trying to socially distance. Please, I can't distance myself from you. Please, you distance yourself from me. Because the dog's instinct is to be friendly, okay? The dog does like to go towards people, especially if they have dogs of their own. So I thought that was a better idea, but again, not everybody likes to be noticed. So I was wondering whether we could get the Be My Eyes app and just hold out our phones like that and use the Be My Eyes app and say, look, can you tell, I'm going to Sainsbury's, can you tell me kind of who's, if I'm too close to someone in the queue, can you tell me if there's a group of people silently kind of walking up across me or around me? I think that's a good idea. I think it might work, but walking hands-free is better, because if you fall over or trip over, you've got two hands to kind of support you. You haven't got a phone smashing into the floor. So I was wondering whether we could get the Be My Eyes app or system put on a camera on a pair of glasses, because then you could just get it to work through the camera on your glasses, call the Be My Eyes service and say to someone, hi, I'm in a queue, can you make sure I'm a certain distance away from someone? Can you help me look for particular buttons so that you're only pressing what you need to press? When it comes to a train station, socially distancing, if it's a route you've already taken, it's a little bit easier. But again, I don't think the Ramble tab is going to do everything. It would be nice to just whip your phone out, or whip your glasses on. Attach to a camera that might attach to something like the Be My Eyes app, or something like, let's say, the Iris system, and go, hi, can you tell me where I need to go? Can you help me right now? Because I think that is the best way, or one of the best ways of socially distancing and not being too obvious about it. Because you might be talking to a friend on Facebook for all they know. You could FaceTime someone and get someone to do the same job. You could FaceTime the family. But I suppose, there's always a pros and cons to everything, and some people might think, well, I want the phone battery more than I want to, I want to be able to call someone in an emergency. I don't want to run down my battery and find that I can't call anybody because I was using the Be My Eyes app. But I think, it's a good idea for future consideration, the Be My Eyes service. I think it's a good idea. What would you do? And I will tag below social distancing, and I will try and put into the description bar the links. The link to Sight and Sound Technologies COVID social distancing discussion, because it was a really interesting discussion, and some things did come out that were, kind of hard to hear, but we have found that a lot of people, an immense amount of people, have shown an immense amount of kindness during this pandemic. And I think I can only wish that it continue. the charitable generosity of people just continues even after this pandemic has kind of been sorted with vaccinations. So I'll see you later, and good luck in the future.